who wants to summarize what we did yesterday? Oh, very good. How wonderful. Okay, so you do it, tomorrow you do it. Yeah, so very good. I'm happy. Please.
So this is just my understanding and interpretation. Yeah. This is about verses 3 and 4, about our relationship with Isvara. Isvara, as we know, is all-pervading power and knowledge. It is illumined by consciousness. We as human beings and as part of the world and the universe, we owe our existence to Isvara. Every cell in our body is governed by the laws of physically, biologically, psychologically, genetically, including our dharmas and karma. In faith and trust, we accept these laws as completeness. Isvara is cause and effect. Very important that we exercise our free will, related with our free will. And also that it's important that we don't try to control them. We must, Brahman and Isvara is oneness. However, unless you work through the laws of Isvara, you can't achieve the vision of oneness of Brahman. Through our faith in Isvara, we learn that our true nature is also Brahman. First, we must lift the veil of ignorance in order to achieve the vision of oneness. That vision of oneness is independent knowledge, which is Isvara. By exercising free will, we choose to change our relationship with the world by looking at it from a Vedic perspective.
Anybody wants to add anything to this?
I heard faith in Isvara.
Okay.
I don't know how accurate that is.
Yeah. So Isvara is not a matter of faith, means there is some kind of a belief. So it's a matter of understanding. So this, yeah, that word you can change. Okay. Anything else in addition to that? So the first thing that the Lord Krishna did is to kind of categorically say that you think about me. But after having said that, he said, please don't think that these two are different goals. So even if you think about, for example, Avyaktam, the final reality, ultimately what he says is you come to me. So that means what we need to understand is that actually this, without Isvara, first of all, the pursuit cannot be complete for a number of reasons. The pramana that Sylvian, how do you...
S-Y-L-V-A-N-A.
No, but how do you spell? Silva. So, the few things you can't do without Isvara. The first is pramana. The Shabda pramana that we use, because it's not within our perception and inference. So this is an independent pramana. And this knowledge, the source of knowledge is all knowledge. So that means your buddhi is ignorant, but at the level of Isvara there is no ignorance. So here pramana is coming from Isvara. Why is it not coming from Brahman?
Brahman is limitless and it doesn't change.
It's attributeless and it is changeless. Yeah. Right? So that means the source of knowledge, this is source of knowledge. It has to be from all knowledge. The source of knowledge cannot be attributeless reality. You understand? So logically, this is the, without Isvara, there is actually, how are you going to be connected to any given guru? That requires intervention of Isvara. In this world of, how many billion people? 13 billion people? No, 7 billion. 7 billion. Yeah, 7 billion people. You to find one person, that requires a lot of connection. So therefore, the guru is also kind of, and what they say is that depending upon your maturity and your readiness, that guru that is compatible to you will be given. So that's how you will actually move forward in your journey of understanding. Okay? So Guru also, here also the order of Isvara is very much. Third, if you have to change your whole preparation and eligibility, which is giving up your loads at which you're carrying resentment, feeling of frustrations or low self-esteem, all that, in order to really correct it fundamentally, you need to understand the world from this unfair world to an intelligent order which requires Ishvara. Your whole reorientation. And finally, as we saw in the morning, this vritti gnana. The final vritti or even other, so that means it's not something that you can decide. You cannot say today I want akandakara vritti, right? So that means it also depends upon the order. So many things have to come together before this knowledge takes place, which actually makes you do this little bit of a quantum jump from your identity with the mind to this whole universal final reality. Even here, so in the words of Vedanta, we use a technical term, and that is what the veil of ignorance has to be lifted. The cloud which covers the sun has to be removed. So that means there also you need Ishvara. We will see in Maya, I will explain this a little bit more in detail when we study Maya.
Sorry, what's the last one?
Vritti gnana. This knowledge that I talked about in the morning, that actually the final knowledge is considered final and complete only when the final vritti, akhandakara vritti, is taking place. That also is not up to you. You can't decide, I want it today, I want it tomorrow. So you can keep trying, but ultimately the veil of ignorance has to be removed, for which you need Ishvara's grace. That is also within the order. Okay? So that means, suppose you missed all of this, and then, and the one thing I want to re-emphasize, so please don't think that the highest goal is Brahman and Ishvara is an inferior goal or an intermediary goal. Because ultimately what you want to understand is Ishvara is everywhere and Brahman is the truth of Ishvara, and Ishvara is not confused about it. So therefore, wherever there is a form, there is Ishvara and there is truth of Ishvara. Right? So that means it's not like I am Brahman and Ishvara is Mithya. So Ishvara is a dependent reality and I am the final reality. This is not how you understand Vedanta. This is why there is this whole teaching, which is what we call Tattvamasi. Tattvamasi means what Ishvara is teaching a jiva. You and me are one. Because Isvara is not confused about both this and Jiva. Whereas Jiva is stuck here. Whereas Ishvara is totally clear about, Ishvara is knowledge which includes the whole thing about everything.
So it's also not correct to say Brahman is Rig and Ishvara is Vishwa?
So the ultimate, we don't use this terminology with reference to in that sense. Yeah. We use it with reference to Jiva, that what is Dhruk and what is Drishya. But you don't use this thing with reference to Ishvara is Drishya and Brahman is Dhruk. But in some ways, this is the ultimate reality. It is true. Okay? But this is the when I teach you what is Upadhi and what is Upahita, you will come to know, right? So that means, so please understand, Mithya and Satyam relationship is what, where there is Mithya, that's exactly where there is Satyam. There is no physical distance between Mithya and Satyam. But what is the relationship? Mithya cannot exist without Satyam. whereas Satyam is independent of Mithya. Right? And Satyam, pervading whole of Mithya, is free from the attributes of Mithya. Right? That you need to keep in mind. So this is what he's saying. Now the next verse, he's saying that suppose you don't want me and you want to pursue directly Brahman. He's saying that it is little difficult. So fifth verse, Klesho dikatarastesham avyakta sattachetasam avyakta hikatir dukkham dehavad viravapyate. Who wants to read? Rashmi.
Greater is the affliction for those whose minds are committed to what cannot be objectified. For an end which cannot be objectified is reached with difficulty by those who are identified with the body.
Wonderful. Did you understand? So we start with our identity with this body and mind. And then, as a result, we also have many other conclusions. Now, to move from here straight to Brahman, which is what he says is something which is not subject to objectification. It is something which is a final reality. It seems like, impossible. Exactly. So that means this is kind of impossible. You can kind of keep thinking about, I'm not the body and I'm not the mind and I'm this awareness and that awareness is everywhere. But somehow it is not complete. Why is it not complete? Because it doesn't give you a proper understanding of the world. It doesn't answer questions like Surya was saying yesterday. How did this world come about in the first place? What am I supposed to do in this world? Right? If I'm Brahman and Brahman is actionless, what is there for me to do? Do you understand? So a lot of gaps remain in your understanding. So there are a lot of these new age thinking. They said, it's not about doing, it's about being. These are all taglines. Tagline, what? Being means what? A whole day you're being. Being means what? So these are, you see, they become like this pseudo knowledge where it actually is shallow. Shallow because you are not here in this world for being, you are here to participate. And your participation has to become meaningful. And your vision of the world has to begin to be what? That I'm endowed with all these capacities. I have Ichha Shakti, capacity to desire. I have capacity to act, I have capacity to know. How do I engage meaningfully in this universe? So therefore, this kind of a thing is like floating in Brahman, floating in the idea of limitlessness, floating in the idea of everything is one, without it actually taking deeper roots and transforming you as a person. So therefore, Lord Krishna says, moving from here to here is, without all of this, it's difficult. Okay? Now, how do you practically use Isvara to reorient your life and make it more meaningful? Are the different aspects of Isvara to change your life are the subsequent verses. Okay? Atha Chittam Samadhatu. No, this is. No, it's 7, no? 6. Yetu sarvani karmani mai sanyasya matparaha ananyenaiva yogena mam dhyayanta upasate teshaham samudarthata mrityu samsara sagarat bhavani nachirat partha maya veshita chetasam. Who wants to read? Yeah.
However, those who worship me, keeping me as the ultimate end, giving up all actions unto me, meditating upon me with a commitment in which there is indeed no other. For them whose minds are absorbed in me, Partha, Arjuna, before long I become the liberator from the ocean of samsara that is fraught with death.
Okay. So that means somewhere the reorientation includes bringing Isvara in your life. So that means meditating upon me means all this life you could be living without not incorporating Isvara in your life in two ways. One is because you don't see it, for you there is no Isvara. This person is called an atheist, right? So you say what? There is no entity called Isvara that I can see, so therefore there is no Isvara. It can also include an agnostic. Agnostic is what? Well, I don't know. There may be a cause, there may not be a cause. I don't have sufficient thinking in order to kind of categorically say whether there is Isvara or not. So you can be agnostic. Or you can say there is Isvara, but this Isvara is all the questions that we ask about Isvara is being. Being means somebody who's out there, who's looking at you and who is deciding for you what is good for you, who's giving you, hey, what do you need in life? So this is how. Why did he do this? All these questions come from the understanding that Isvara is an entity. One being outside, like you, but there is a big uncle sitting somewhere else. So that means even if you think, that's why we say it's not faith, right? That was a good observation, Stefan. Because that's a faith, because you don't see some big entity sitting out there, but you infer by saying that, hey, this Jagat is intelligent, so therefore there must be some intelligent creator, and he is like me, but with more powers, with more kind of knowledge. So that means it always, and with a mind. Do you understand? That's why, what was the purpose of him doing it? So all these questions come from, we attribute Isvara to a being, one person who's deciding, like you, who has a mind, who decides. So this is what. Now, from all this, we have to move to what? Isvara as knowledge and power, which is everywhere. So that means whether you were a believer or you were agnostic or you were non-believer, all of them have to change. You understand? It's not like the believer has to be exactly as it is. Even the believer has to change one's understanding of Isvara. So that means here it then means a non-personal and all knowledge and all power. Please don't imagine a total mind. It's not total mind. It's not mind in the first place. If it was a total mind, what will happen is, what about all your minds? Are they part of Isvara or not? If they are part of Isvara, they are full of confusions. So please don't think that there is one big super mind in which all of our minds are connected. Then what will happen? You only have your ignorance. Isvara will be stuck with everybody's ignorance. So you can imagine the mess. Right? So that means we are talking about a non-mind. Knowledge and power which makes your mind what it is, which makes the fish's mind what it is, which makes a rock what it is, which makes the sun what it is. It's a non-mind and it is in and through everything. So therefore, everybody has to change, and that requires a reorientation. So every time you feel as though you go back, we very easily go back to the kind of previous pattern. So you have to unlearn it. So when you unlearn it, that is called bringing Isvara in your life. Those patterns have to go, we have to replace it with proper understanding. Right? Now, the other way, what he's saying is, offer your karma to me. Right? However, those who worship me, keeping me as the ultimate end. And that means not only you want to recognize Isvara as being that which is everywhere, But ultimately, if you understand what the nature of moksha is, what do you also keep in mind is what? Ultimately, I want to know the truth of Isvara, which happens to be also my truth. So that means Isvara is the ultimate goal. Then offering all your actions unto me. What does that mean? Generally we think offering actions to Isvara refers to all the kind of different prayers that we do, bhajans that we do, or any meditations that we do. Right? This is what we think that offering all the actions to him means, or to Isvara, not him or her or anything, Isvara. But here, the understanding of Isvara is much bigger, so therefore offering actions unto Isvara involves understanding dharma. As Sylviana has very nicely explained, all the different laws which consist Ishvara's order. And there she added one more, which is dharma. So that means dharma is also the order or the law of Ishvara. So when I perform any actions, I cannot ignore dharma because it is order. All of us kind of dharma, when you translate, it can be translated in English as ethics. Right? But what is the difference between being ethical and following Ishvara's order of dharma? Do you see any difference, or is it exactly the same?
Well, one person can be ethical but not follow dharma, let's say. For example, you can care about the animals and not eat them, but in other parts of your life you might not be following dharma.
Okay, so that means one first thing is this ethics. For example, you can be highly ethical, but there are a few things that you may be stuck with if you don't understand this ethics as part of law of Ishvara, dharma of Ishvara. What do I mean? There can be a lot of human beings who are ethical, but they may kind of feel life is not compensating them enough for being ethical. You understand? If it is an order, it is not possible. Order means there is a cause, it must produce an effect. It's not possible not to have an effect. Right? So you don't complain, oh, gravity works better for Priyanka and gravity doesn't work for me. We don't complain like that. Why? Because we understand gravity works equally for everyone. It's an impartial, impersonal law which is never not going to apply to anybody. So therefore, this kind of complaints that we have, that I am not compensated enough. For my being good. This kind of a thing will go away. Second, those who are not following it are getting away from it. This is also not possible if it is law. Right? So that's why I said it seems like that, because there is a huge, the laws operate within a very long time period, millennia. And you're looking at it from a very short period of time. And in this short period of time, it may seem little skewed to you. So let me give you an example, a very simple example. Suppose somebody was living at the time of this Mahabharata, and suppose that person was watching Duryodhana's behavior, right, and how he was being so unfair to his brothers, and every time he was getting away and getting away and getting away, right? So the conclusion is, what is this? The Pandavas are so nice and they are suffering, and Duryodhana is so bad and he is getting away. And suppose you passed away, suppose that person who was observing passed away before the war of Mahabharata, what does it seem like?
Unfair world.
Unfair world. Duryodhana kept getting away and there was no retribution. You understand? So this is what I mean by your limited time horizon in which you look. It may seem like that, but if you actually extend, then it is not possible. Law means it is not possible. This is why this is what we call infallibility of Isvara we have to see. Otherwise we keep seeing the whole world through our eyes. We think we are more right, we know it all. That is human arrogance. Right? In fact, in the countless flow of time, you are a speck. And therefore, if you want to live intelligently, you have to understand the world a little bit better than what your eyes can read. So therefore, this too is not possible. So therefore, what happens? Your following dharma becomes loadless. Otherwise, you can be highly dharmic but carrying a lot of load of dissatisfaction. Then, there is a third thing. There are some people who are highly dharmic and they have this whole sense of superiority. And that superiority, the flip side of it is they are very intolerant about people who are not meeting their high standards. About others. These two are again distortions. Suppose you understand, suppose you are a sailor, right? And you understand what the winds, you understand the sea, how the water flows and all of that. Do you feel superior? Do you? That's the simplest thing that you can do to live to sail intelligently. So therefore, just understanding the laws and following them in no way makes you feel superior. In fact, that is, it's done for you. You're doing yourself what? You're living intelligently so that you're not hurting yourself. So therefore, you come out of this false sense of superiority when you're an ethical human being. If you bring Isvara as law of dharma. And the flip side of this is, you're not intolerant to others. Why? Because you understand that what they're not understanding the world properly is the reason why they are not following it. And if you can do something about it, what do? You lift them up and make them see, and you don't actually look down upon them. So all your attitudes, being dharmic, but with this proper frame of mind. Otherwise, if you don't bring into ethics laws of Isvara, these distortions are possible. So therefore, it becomes what we call a choiceless choice. Now, it also makes you answer one more very, very fundamental question. What is the fundamental question? That what is the nature of human being? Like with reference to the world, we ask this question. What is the nature of world in which we are living? Is it unfair? Is it random? Or is it intelligent? Or it is predestined? What is the nature of the world? Same way, you can ask the question, if this law of dharma enables you to answer one more question, and that is, what is the nature of human being? Is human being, by definition, a mean creature? Or it is just totally neutral, you're totally blank? at the time of birth, and whatever inputs are given, that is what is going to decide how you turn out to be. Or basically a human being is a good human being. Basic. But due to some confusion, this gets clouded, like the sun gets clouded in Atma-bodha, and then it becomes all. So it also, this enables you to answer this question. And when you answer this question, what will happen is, when you interact with the people, your whole attitude will change. So that means, what? So how is it connected to this? If there is a law of dharma, which is a law of Isvara, then has to be, how will you follow the law unless you don't know? Can you follow a law that you don't know? You have to know it, right? Only then you are liable, otherwise you are not liable. So that means this law of dharma, we all know about it. Why? Because it exists in the minds of human beings. Every human being is inbuilt, coming with an inbuilt program. What is an inbuilt program? What I want from others, and I also know what others want from me. This is what we call, this is what makes human being fundamentally a good human being. Why? Because this program is equally existing for everyone. At a very young age, suppose, right? You have kids? Yeah. Suppose your kid went and hit somebody. Is that person going to come and be very proud and say, Mom, today I hit that person? Well, generally, what will the kid do? Try to hide it. Why will it try to hide it? Because the child knows very well this is not thing to be done. So that means, and suppose somebody hits the child. Is the child very happy, comes home to a mom and says, Mom, great, today somebody hit me. That is what we call natural program. Natural program means without learning anything from the teachers, without learning anything from anybody, the child knows, I don't want to be hurt, and the child also knows others don't want to be hurt. This is a natural program. Right? I don't want to be, as if the child grows, I don't want to be lied to. So that's why people say that, all these psychologists, they all say that, right? Suppose you tell your kid that if you do this, I'll give you 5 candies, suppose, and you forget. The child, you will damage the child. Because the child will wait. The child will wait for you, it's nothing, it's no big deal. What 5 candies is nothing. It's not important, you forgot. But the child feels confused. Why did my dad say this and why is he not doing it? Right? This is how a child's mind, the natural program is extremely strong and very, very clear. But what happens is, over a period of time, the child gets confused. Why? Because the parents, the adults' behaviors are all inconsistent. And initially the child doesn't understand how is it all inconsistent and gets confused. And later on, the buddhi of the child is not developed enough, so the child can have attributes like, oh, I may be doing something wrong, or maybe this is the way to do it. This is how we confuse ourselves. This is how our normal, natural program gets all messed up. Right? Because people who are our role models, they are not able to follow Dharma. So therefore, this is a natural program. Every human being comes with this understanding. So then the next question, which I kind of answered, if everybody comes with this understanding, why is it that even adults deviated from it? Right? What made us deviate from this normal, natural behavior, right? And that happens to us, right? All the time. I speak to people and I'm surprised how they condition themselves to believe things completely against universal value. Right? So somebody, I heard in Bombay. So what is your natural reaction? Somebody hits you. What do you do? This is a you don't need to think. What will you do? You'll retrieve, right? Nobody goes and says, yeah, hit me more. That is not natural program. Right? Suppose somebody teaches you, yeah, you have to, it's okay, you have to be forgiving, you have to be like this, and you have to be understanding and all. And you let people abuse you. What are you doing? You are going against the natural program. So that means, and what is worse is, you make it into a virtue. I'm so good, I'm letting people abuse me and I'm forgiving. It's not a virtue. That means you are going against Isvara's program. This is what the psychologists will all say, draw your boundaries. You can't just let people do things because actually it is against this natural program. So therefore, this includes your following. We have problems in both areas. You're following these values, and the second is you're putting boundaries when others are transgressing this. Both areas we have problems. When others are violating this towards you. And over a period of time, if this keeps on happening consistently, what will happen? Your sense of all this will be replaced by all your subjective thinking. And this is what we call, you move away from the order of Isvara and you enter your subjective world. Your subjective world, your subjective values, your subjective virtues, everything takes you away. Till one day, what will happen? How long can you be outside the laws? Not for too long. That is how Isvara is, right? So therefore, one day everything will turn topsy-turvy. It's a little bit of a shock. Either you re-understand and you change and you align, or you go further down in your own stories of being a victim. So let me give you an example. It's so interesting, this whole thing of boundaries, how you cannot let people abuse you and things like that. So I had a friend. So she lives in Vietnam. And she's actually very clever, so she works with the World Bank. And then very clever and very successful in her profession and all that. But with I think her relationship with her kids is that she's so busy that when she comes home, the only way that she when she's tired, so the only way to show your care towards your kids is what? You give them money, you buy them things that they want. Right? Because then you feel guilty that I'm not spending. So now the teenage girl, she is just doing all crazy things. So what she thinks, I'm a good parent because I can't spend that much time. And I compensate by little bit indulging them with things that they want. And what happens is, over a period of time, and she thinks she's a good mother, and she thinks she's looking after them. But what actually ends up happening is, the child is wild. So therefore, this kind of a thing of our not understanding can actually create not only, so that means now her whole idea that I have been a good mother gets questioned, because now when the situations start emerging, she has to rethink whether I have been a good mother or not. So that means the situations come to your life, which, what are they coming for? They are not coming to punish you. That, oh, you've been bad mother, Isvara is going to punish you for it. Not at all. They come because the distortions and that you have been living with, they have to surface and they have to culminate into situations. And as they culminate into situations which sometimes become crises, it gives you an impetus little bit to rethink what you have been believing and come from Pratibhasika back to and this is why what Swamiji used to say, suppose you understand this, that every human being is a good human being by program. It is all the subsequent confusion which makes a person behave in all distorted way, your vocabulary will change. So he said that, he used to say, there is no criminal in the world, but people take to crime. People do take to crime because there is some pain there, unresolved pain. You understand? Criminal means you have labeled the person. You have given a name, an unchangeable name to that person. And that is almost what? This person is mean. This person is this. This person is unethical. This person, these are so many names we give to people. And we put them in a box and we dismiss them. So that has to change, and you have to say, hey, actually, this is a good, the person has distorted behaviors because there is some confusion which has caused this deviation from the natural program. So this is why one of my friends who actually studied with me, he lives in Indore, Madhya Pradesh, and he used to go to the prison and he used to teach Bhagavad Gita. So initially all these prisoners, they look very tough and they are all like, some of them is murdered and somebody, they are like, and you feel what will they understand from Gita? They are all like completely all over the place. And as he teaches them, he says in 2 or 3 months they all change. Initially they have resistance. Initially they said, what Gita? And they are caught in their own thing. And when it touches, at one point, it touches their core. And when it touches their core, they break down. They break down means that they just kind of totally cry and they feel so bad and they touch his feet and I've done such horrible things and I've done. So that means this is what we call through something. What did he do? He didn't bring anything new. He's not like, oh, you should be like this. And that by showing the realities, what happens? It touches you very deeply. It puts you in touch with your most basic core person. This is what Surya talks about in meditation, that the most basic core person who's a simple person. Simple, connected, without complexes. This is the person. That is, all of us are like that. Curious. Over the years, what we have done is, we've built layers and layers and layers and layers of distortions. And therefore, the more you understand that there is this law, the more and more you come to the basic, simple human being. which is not complex, which is not carrying so many complexes, carrying so many judgments, is all rigid, hard. And Swamiji used to say, a ninja is always ready to fight the world, distrusting people, being suspicious, being highly, overly critical. Critical thinking is good, it's very good, but always looking at all the problematic sides, it's a yet another type of mind. So that means this person has to become just a simple human being this is why I was saying yesterday, cheerful, enthusiastic, curious, engaged, connected. So therefore, this is your natural program. So therefore, this living a law of dharma, suppose you don't do that, and suppose you act from your distortion, then, as I said, there is a compensation system also which is part of Isvara, and that is called, you can't escape the consequences of your actions. So you can get away for a while, but you can't totally escape the consequences. So when you are following dharma, you are not doing others a favor, but you are also doing it for yourself. So this is the way that one person can bring Isvara as law of dharma. Yes.
Just to clarify that the terms which you used initially in terms of feedback or the effect or consequence, they're all the same.
Yeah,
right?
yes, I know. Yeah, exactly.
Just a related question. So when we talk about the millennials, and we say they are millennials, they are entitled, they want instant gratification. So we take it from a perspective of what we have seen versus what is the current behavior that is exhibited. So are we kind of using a lens to do it, or it's actually a behavioral issue that determines how dharma and karma is?
So, there are some generation differences, but what we need to understand, this is a good question, let me address it slightly differently. What happens is that when we talk about dharma, we have to be a little bit careful about what we are talking about, in the sense that there is one which is the universal ethical values. They don't change over a period of time. This is why you call them universal. So what it means is it is across nations, cultures, gender, across time. It doesn't change, right? So that means when you read Mahabharata, you read, no, Lucid? Yeah. So when do you have to think about how is Duryodhana, what kind of a character it is? It's very clear, right, how he is. The person who was living long ago, when Duryodhana was living, also can figure it out if the person is not too distorted. And then suppose somebody 100 years from now reads Mahabharata, one doesn't have to rethink, oh, was Duryodhana good or not? That is what we call universal ethical values. It doesn't change with time, it doesn't change with cultures. Okay? But what happens is, when we talk about values, we sometimes confuse it with cultural norms, social context. This keeps changing. Right? Don't confuse this with this. Cultures change over a period of time. So this is what Shona was telling me, that my daughters tell me, Shona is so cool, and said my daughters tell me, Mom, you are so old-fashioned. So that and she is so cool. So that means what? The culture and the behavioral patterns of how, they change over a period of time. Right? So that is what we call these social context changes. So one thing that Swamiji, when he was in USA, so many Indian parents in USA, they used to come to him and they used to tell Swamiji that these kids who are growing in America, they don't have what values. Then Swamiji used to tell them, what exactly do you mean as values? Are you meaning to say, so then one of the things, they don't respect parents. Okay, so that means, now, is this, so in this value that they have to respect parents, that may be fine. At the same time, if it is coming from your understanding that when I say whatever and my kids without any resistance, just follow what I say, whether I make sense or not, that is not considered following values. And if you think it is not following values, then you have to rethink what is. Are they losing values or they are becoming little wiser? Do you understand? So in Bangkok they sent us the same, all the Indians who live abroad, they all have same problem. Oh, the Indians who are living abroad, they don't have the same values. So what values? Same, they don't obey us. So it's like as though you are very wise. You yourself are confused and you want to impose your thinking on others. And they are standing up. Thank God they are standing up. So that means all this we need to, then the other very big thing in the US, what? That oh, at the age of 12 or 13 they are dating, parents cannot handle it. Indian parents cannot handle the fact that 13-year-old woman says, I have a date and I'm going out. And so therefore, what happens is, these are what? Cultural norms. Cultural norms, they are not like some universal ethical values or anything like that. So what happens is, here we actually have to be a little bit more flexible. And we have to say that, hey, as the time moves, all these changes, I can't expect my kids to exactly behave as, because my context was very different from this context. So if I didn't like this context, I should not have brought my kids in America. I mean, you can't bring them to America and then hope that they will behave like Indians, but even Indians don't behave like that anymore. So that means India of your time. Do you understand? So that means, and then it all seems like all one value. We put it under value. So therefore, here when we talk about the laws of Isvara, we only refer to this. Here, if you are rigid, you become orthodox. That means there is lack of malleability, your inability to change with times. So this is why, in fact, it is how important it is to kind of distinguish, that will make you a really good thinking person, right? So that means how many rules my teacher has broken. For longest time, Swamiji, what? Women were not taught Vedanta. Vedic chanting is what? Not allowed for women. Foreigners, forget it.
And foreign women?
Neither chanting nor teaching, nothing. So, do you understand? So that means this is a whole social context within which he operated. He had to have a lot of courage, a lot of vision to break free from that. Initially, maybe people criticized him because they couldn't handle it. Right? But over a period of time, they all, what Sringeri Acharya gave him a huge honor. The most traditional acharyas, they really felicitated him for his contribution to this knowledge. So that means a human mind, a wisdom doesn't mean you are just going on following some traditional values and going on passing and then, that is not. Your ability to distinguish what is subject to change, what makes sense and what doesn't make sense, what is just a convention which I need not follow, and what is it that is non-negotiable. This kind of makes you a wise thinking person. Right? Now, there is one more nuance added, and that is that even though if it is a universal ethical values, it is not absolute in nature. So that means dharma cannot be followed as do's and don'ts, which is totally rigid in black and white category. So that means there are some situations which require interpretation. So the simplest, start with a simple example, then we go to a little bit more complex example. So the simple example is, suppose somebody is being hit by some criminal, and he comes to your home and asks for a shelter. So you give him a shelter because you don't want him to be hurt. Now, few minutes later, this person who is chasing him comes and knocks on your door and asks, is this person here? What will you say?
No.
Hopefully. Right? And you may say no. But when you say no, are you being unethical? If you just have this black and white picture of, not telling the truth is lying, and lying is considered against universal ethical values. If you go by that definition, then what? That person was lying. But if you look at it slightly from a bigger standpoint, then what? The person was doing it not to lie, but what was the person doing it for? To protect an innocent person from being hurt. So that means it doesn't become against universal value anymore. So that means that it is not just, if it is black and white, you don't have to use your mind. You just have to say, this is this, and therefore it is like that. But when it is subject to interpretation, then what you have to do, you have to use your faculty of thinking and you have to interpret it. But when you interpret, you have to make sure you are not justifying and you are not kind of tweaking things to your own advantage. You are actually, why you should not do that? Because the ethical values remain and their feedback systems remain. So if you use this interpretation for your gain, you can't escape from the feedback, even if you have convinced yourself that I am doing the right thing. But suppose you have really interpreted rightly, then what will be the feedback system in your favor? Is that right? Okay. Now, let's take a few more examples from Mahabharata. Mahabharata is full of examples where how at times universal values have to be interpreted and how most exalted human beings at times make a mistake in the interpretation. And what does Lord Krishna represent? He represents the right interpretation. So he makes you see the situation from a much bigger standpoint and what is the right way to do. So the first example is that of Bhishma. he had taken a vow that whoever is the king of Hastinapura, he is going to protect that king. And when he took that vow, he stuck to that vow, and what he ended up doing is, he ended up taking Duryodhana's side in the war. So that means he was following a value. That was, he was sticking to his vow that he had taken. But as a result, what ended up happening is he was on the wrong side. So at that time, what would have been the correct interpretation? Correct interpretation would have been, yes, I had taken a vow to protect the king of Hastinapura. But if the king has become the king through illegitimate means, I have no obligation to protect. This is what we call right interpretation. That means you are looking at the situation. It's not for your personal gain. It's not like you are tweaking it for your benefit, but you are looking at it from a larger perspective. Right? The second very starking example of Draupadi being disrobed in the court. So what? Yudhishthir lost the entire, he lost everything. And then he lost himself, he lost his brothers, he lost his wife, so his wife was dragged into the pot, and Duryodhana wanted to disrobe her. Now, Draupadi was not a weak woman, so she tried to protect herself. So the first, she did three things, very clever. So the first thing she did is, she asked, in that court, Bhishma was sitting, Duryodhana and Dronacharya was sitting, all the wise people were sitting. And she asked them, and she says, hey, are you going to sit there and watch me being disrobed? And then Bhishma doesn't do anything. Why doesn't he do anything? Not because he is indifferent, right? He is also trying to live. He was highly exalted human being. He was trying to live a life of dharma. But his understanding, how he interpreted dharma was that it is Yudhishthir who decided to play a game of dice. He could have stopped. First of all, he could have refused. Having seen how Duryodhana was behaving, he did not have accepted the invitation in the first place. But suppose he accepted the invitation, then he could have stopped by saying, okay, now I've lost enough and I want to stop. Even if Duryodhana was prodding him, doesn't mean he has to go along with it. Then he lost everything. Then Duryodhana still kept saying, no, you have still your wife. So now he has misused his faculty of choice. He has to bear the consequences. Who am I to intervene? That was his interpretation. It's not that he was indifferent to the situation, but he was trying to live a life of dharma, and that was his understanding. So when that did not work, Draupadi was very clever. So Draupadi, what did she do? She asked the court the second question, where she tried to protect herself by her own reasoning. So what did she say? She asked the court. She says, who did Yudhishthir lose first? Himself or me? And he had lost himself first. Then she said, if he has lost himself first, he is no longer a king, he is a slave. And if he is a slave, what right does he have to bet somebody else? He has lost his status as a king in the first place. So she tried to protect it. This is what we call dharma. Dharma means you have to be clever. Then nobody listened to her. Her voice was not heard. Then there's a third thing. What does he do? He thinks of Krishna. He thinks of Krishna. Does he have to think all of this? What does he do? Instantaneously provides what? He saves her. How does he save? That is also interesting. So her sari was being pulled, and he keeps what? The sari keeps going and going and going till Durshasana, who was pulling his Duryodhana's brother, falls down. So that means he did not think for a second. His understanding of dharma was what? Clear. His interpretations were looking at the bigger picture, not getting stuck in small, narrow vision and details. So then, when somebody asked, so what was Lord Krishna thinking? Why did he not hesitate? What was it going on in his mind in terms of understanding of dharma? So they say, Lord Krishna, and there is a book which explains all this. So the first thing he says is, first of all, the game was fraud. Right? It was not a fair game or anything. Shakuni was manipulating the dice. So he says, when the whole game is a cheat, you don't need to honor the outcome of that game. Very clever. And somebody in our retreat last year asked this question, and that was a clever question. Suppose it was suppose Shakuni had not cheated. Suppose he actually lost everything, then what? Even then, what? What has she done to be distraught and humiliated like this? So that cannot be allowed. This is Lord Krishna's dharma. So that means that your ability, life is complex, and it brings not black and white situations. And your ability to rise above and look at the bigger picture and do what needs to be done, not going against dharma, but reinterpreting dharma in a much larger sense. That is something which is that the intricacies of following dharma. Your mind and its infrastructure has to become bigger. It has to become more evolved. It has to become more intricate to be able to navigate through difficult situations. There are no blacks and whites. There are not simple answers at times. So therefore, when you look at this law of dharma, because for us, the whole world is relative. It's all, ultimately it's mithya. So in relative world, there is no absolute. Absolute is only Brahman, and that is free from dharma and adharma. But you can't go from adharma to absolute. What is the route to absolute? From adharma or imperfect understanding of dharma, adharma to dharma, and then the absolute which is free from. This is a journey of jiva. If you go from here to here, not possible. This is why you need Isvara. This is your check. So, this is what Lord Krishna is saying. Bring me in your actions. Bring me in your actions doesn't mean keep thinking, oh Krishna, take care of everything. Oh Krishna, you know everything that I want. Oh Krishna, do everything for me. That is not bringing Isvara in your life. This is called bringing Isvara in your life. Understanding the nature of Isvara and navigating intelligently. Understanding the law of dharma and its complexity. Then, what else is he saying? He's saying, meditating upon it. So that means that we will see that what we do in morning classes that the mind has its way of thinking, which is like, the previous orientations, how we have been living our life is so strong that the minute you go outside this class, what's going to take over is what? Your normal patterns, your normal behaviors. Because the strength of 1 hour class compared to how you have lived for so many years and your thinking patterns, they are not going to change immediately. So what do? Meditation is one practice where you calm down, get yourself, together, gain certain depth in your being, and then reorient yourself. Your whole thinking has to change because your whole understanding of the world has changed. Suppose you have a problem, I'm useless, you have to change that. What is it that you have to change? I'm one of the manifestations of Ishvara. This is not called positive thinking. What is the difference between positive thinking and bringing realities into your life? So please don't think that I'm this
Subjectivity.
Yeah, exactly. So that means this the positive thinking is not exactly what I'm talking about. So our teacher used to say, we are reality people. What is reality people? You have to see things as they are. So, one simple example, very simple example, that is a telling example. So somebody said, suppose you see glass half empty, then you are a negative thinker, right? Because you are seeing the empty part. And suppose you see the glass half full, you are a positive thinker. Who is a Vedantin?
It's half full and half empty.
Exactly. Exactly. Because that's the truth. That's a whole picture. You can't only focus on this and give up this. And you can't focus only on that and give up that. You have to see the whole picture. And with this half full glass, what can I do? So that means at any given point in time, every time you see a situation either from only a positive or a negative standpoint, you will make it subjective. Because you are not seeing, objectivity is what? Seeing the whole situation as it is without coloring it through your lens.
Otherwise you bring bias in.
Otherwise you bring biases. He's an economist. So he knows this line. Exactly. You bring biases. You bring personal biases, which will actually interfere in, suppose you have to make decisions, then it will interfere because those biases will misguide your decisions. So therefore, we have to learn, our mind has to abide in realities. And that abiding, so that means during meditation, for us it is not just observing your thoughts. It's not just sitting quietly or being thoughtless. This is not Vedanta meditation. This observing thoughts means what? Yeah, you observe, you go on observing, and then what? Again, a mind creates a division. I'm the observer and these thoughts. Within mind you create an thought. Again, yet another division. It does give you some space, but it's not any... How are you going to change the quality of your thoughts? That's the question. How are you going to make your thoughts more wiser and representing realities and abiding in realities? That is the question.
A little bit of a confusion that adharma and dharma are free from the Brahman.
Yeah, so that means the final reality, which is Brahman, is one limitless awareness. In this there is no dharma. Dharma and adharma is for an individual. So now the individual wants to get to this final reality, but the individual may be here, not total adharma, but either confusion about understanding dharma, or partial following dharma, or sometimes having difficulty, or arrogance, whatever, or feeling while following dharma I am not being treated. All of this has to go, and proper understanding of dharma has to first come.
So
That is what we
understanding
call-
of dharma has to come.
Sorry?
Need not be understanding of dharma has to come, but you need not totally be the so-called ethical ones or something which we discussed. Sometimes. Would it be that way or?
So that means you're able to make decisions taking into account what all I said, no? That these ethical values are non-negotiable. At the same time, the complex situations require certain interpretation. So your mind has to abide in this dharma. Yeah? That is a complex. That's a sophisticated mind. It's a refined mind. And that refined mind then can reach that which is above dharma and adharma. Anyatya dharmat anyatra adharmat. But from here, this is why Lord Krishna is now talking. How? Because first he said, you must bring me first. If you keep going here, it will be not easy. Now he is elaborating.
So this is interesting. Because see, imagine now you bypass this step. And some people also say that. Okay? I am awareness. I am not a doer. I am not a karta. What dharma can touch me and so on. So I can do anything.
But if you
And I am free. I am free to do anything. Consequences, nobody will be affected. They are also all awareness. And I will not have to bear the consequences of my actions because I am like unaffected. I'm a sangha. I'm awareness. Imagine the disaster. Half-cooked Vedanta. Not even cooked. It's big.
What you told about Vedanta meditation, points in Vedanta meditation?
You want to know?
Yeah.
Okay. So, the points of Vedanta meditation is the first one. Surya, are you attending Surya's
Yeah, yeah.
meditation? Okay, very good. So, Surya is looking. So, I will do. No, I will do. No, because no. Surya doesn't say much, but when he looks, then I'm a little afraid. So I have to check with him. Okay, so let's look at meditation steps.
Because I don't
according
speak about this.
these steps. Let me tell you.
Doing it. So it will be very useful.
He covers what happened yesterday's teaching and all, everything is properly covered in meditation.
Vedanta meditation is preparation. It is all preparing for this knowledge, making your mind ready for this knowledge. Okay, the first step of meditation is Vedanta meditation. First, you have to relax, right? You have to get into the mode. You have to get into the mode of meditation. So what do you do? One of the easiest things to do is to what? Body scanning. It's one of the methods to what? Kind of relax your body. And also, sometimes what happens is, we carry whatever tensions and all that we have, also they get transferred to our body. So some part begins to ache, some she knows because she works with those patients all the time, good one. So what, sometimes you have a backache, sometimes you have stiff shoulders. So that means we carry a lot of tension in our body, right? So what happens is when you observe your body, then you pay attention, and wherever it is stiff or aching and all that, you just give your attention without doing anything. It will automatically relax. So you want to be this person whose body is relaxed. And the second is breathing. Your breathing is connected both to your physiology as well as your mind. So this is why, even if you go to, suppose now I think in the US when you go to somebody, stress release program, they do a lot of breathing exercises. So why? Because the breathing is one thing which is connected to your body and also to your mind. So if you're really stressed, if you do slow breathing, what will happen? Immediately it will calm you down. So that is breathing. You don't need to manipulate the breathing, you can just watch the breathing and it will quieten your mind. Then the third is what we call, with this you have given task to your mind, japa.
One thing, I just want to add one thing. When we studied with Swamiji, he was saying, I am coming at, let's say, 6:30. He was expecting us to come on time, of course, but to have done on our own body scan and watching breathing. Okay, so he said, come 5 minutes, 10 minutes before. And as I come, you are ready, then the meditation will start. I will then guide you through the meditation. It's interesting.
Okay, so these are preparatory, so that what
Preparatory.
Surya said.
Okay? This is what I want to emphasize here. And
This
it's
is
nice
not
to-
meditation.
And
So
it's
some
nice to
people do
begin
this
by
as
this.
the only meditation. This is only a preparatory step to meditation, right? Japa. Japa is, as Surya explained, you can take any mantra. Let's say Om Namah Shivaya or any other that you want. Right? One condition is it cannot be a meaningless sound. It has to, because meditation in Sanskrit is defined as Saguna Brahma Vishaya Manasa Vyapara. What does it mean? Meditation is actually relating to Isvara. And this is exactly what is mentioned in this verse, meditating upon me. So that means meditation is not some just random quietening activity or anything. It is actually relating to Isvara. Bringing Isvara in your life, because as I told you, the real Isvara is not in anybody's life before you come to Vedanta. Your image of Isvara may be there, but it's not accurate. So you have to bring the right understanding of Isvara in your life. So therefore, what is this? Suppose you tell yourself, I want to do it for 10 minutes. I want to chant Om Namah Shivaya for 10 minutes. You give a task to your mind. For next 10 minutes, I'm going to do this chant Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya. What will happen after 3 or 4 chants? Your mind will go to, yeah, what's that for breakfast? So that means this gives you an insight. On everyday basis, when your mind goes from one thing to the other, it's no event. Why? Because that's how mind keeps going from one thing to the other, this associative thinking that that guy was talking about. So it moves from one thing to the other, and it is not considered as a distraction, because that's how the mind is. But now what has happened is you have given a task to your mind for only 10 minutes, not 24 hours. Only 10 minutes, and your mind cannot stick to the task that you have given even for 10 minutes. It goes off. So this is what, in this case, you recognize the distraction. If you have not given any task, you don't even recognize that it is distraction. It just keeps moving from one thing to the other. So what is your job? As you understand, because it's supposed to do this, it's doing something else, what do? You bring it back. You bring it back to the chant. Then again, after 3-4 chants, again it will go. That is the nature of mind. It keeps moving from one thing to the other. What do? You bring it back. When you do that, over a period of time, the number of time that it goes off, it begins to reduce. As it begins to reduce, what you will find is your mind becomes more focused, less distracted. We have to improve the quality. So these are the practices. Focus is increased, distractions are reduced. This type of a mind can actually, you can use for anything, not only for Vedanta. Anything that you do, if you have a focused mind which is not distracted, what will happen is, it will gain a certain depth, because your mind doesn't keep going here and there. You are able to stay with one thing and understand it totally. So that means, in this, not only the focus is increased, but by increasing the focus, depth, whenever you apply a focused mind, depth of understanding of anything will increase. Because it doesn't keep going somewhere else. Then, the second thing that you can get, so the focus is, as he was saying, that the mind also not only goes on distraction, but it starts with what we call associative thinking. Associative thinking means one thing will take you to the other, then that will take you to the other. So that is what we call associate. This is called distraction, this is called associative thinking.
I don't see the difference.
Okay, distraction means I just move, instead of Om Namah Shivaya, I go to lunch, right? Associative thinking means that from lunch I go to jalebi, from jalebi I go to, oh, I like pasta, from pasta you go to, do you understand? So that means from jalebi in this thing you go to pasta in Italy. So in three thoughts you've gone from here to there. So that is
the first step, and then it's association.
Then it is. So that means it's a first step. Then what will happen if it'll just keep moving through association. And what is the connection between jalebi and pasta? None. At the same time, there is some associative thinking which connects the two through your mind. So this is how whole day your mind keeps working. So now, what you want to do, associative thinking by definition is not bad. Why? Because even in learning, what you need is, you need to build. So that I first need to teach you this, and then I can't restart. I have to build on this, right? Then I build on that. Then I build on that. So in some ways, we do use associative thinking is not totally useless. So in learning also it is useful. But the mind's tendency to go through this associative thinking, if you don't use it well, it has a downside. Only if you don't use it well. What is a downside? Your associative thinking can lead you to make huge conclusions based on very small data. And you keep on building on it. So that means we make so many very big statements, right? I see it all the time, right? So that means, all Tamilians are like that, or whatever. I don't know, whatever. So that means it's a huge load. What has happened is, kind of associate, this happened, so therefore this happened, therefore this happened. So what happens is, a small event becomes big through associative thinking. So suppose now you read in the newspaper, economy is slowing down. Okay, that's one. Economy is slowing down. You go to your work. and your boss doesn't say hi to you. Economy is slowing down, my boss didn't say hi to me, my company maybe is not doing so well, maybe I'm going to be fired. So this is what we call our stories build very quickly without enough evidence. So that means then what happens is small events begin to have a huge impact on us. Why does it begin to have huge impact on us? Because the data is there. It's not that it's not there, but from that data, through associative thinking, I have made a huge story for myself. My mind is overwhelmed. My responses are all going to be all over the place. So now you have to make the mind factual, and your associative thinking has to become deliberate. When you want it, yes, but not building stories, which makes you enter in a subjective mode. And that subjective mode begins to be real for you. That is what you want to avoid. So therefore, this is a practice where what happens is, what is the first chant? Om Namah Shivaya. What is the second chant? Om Namah Shivaya. Om Namah Shivaya. What is the third chant? Om Namah Shivaya. So that means it makes your thinking not associative when you want it, but not on a mechanical mode. Right? You have to move from a mechanical mode to a deliberate mode. When you want to use it, wonderful. But if it doesn't just go on building stories. So this is, yes, you have a question.
The question is about the importance of the chant.
Yeah.
You could give another task to the mind. You could tell it, follow the breath. That's a pretty good task.
So that's
and
why
the same things will apply here. It will get distracted and you'll bring it back and so forth and so on.
That's okay. So that means I haven't yet finished the whole, this is only the third step, right? So that means, because what is the definition? Relating to Isvara. So that means these are the things, then I will come to where Isvara. You're right, this particular job, any sound can do, absolutely, right? You can bring it back. This is why so many people do this totally meaningless sounds, and it will do the job. Both, it will do this, both. But what it will not do, I will show later. Okay?
That's one question. So is there any scientific reason of doing 108 times as this in a do a japa for 108?
Yeah. So Surya, you know.
Scientific, no.
But what is this 108?
108 is 54 letters of the alphabet. And you go one way and the other, you cover the entire alphabet. So symbolically, what do? Alphabet, the letters constitute the words. And imagine all the combination and all the collection of words you can have and build with these simple letters, languages, to describe the entire world. So it means what? The words, all the words which stands for all these children. Okay? That is one way of looking at it. This is what I mean. Scientific? No, this is not scientific.
Okay, so now this associative thinking becomes more deliberate. The third thing is, which is also very important, and that is, generally, our whole self-identity is with what? Our thoughts. We define ourselves by the thoughts. So now, what happens is, what we are asked to do during japa is observe the silence between two thoughts. Thought, silence. Thought, silence. Thought, silence.
But you are still saying the mantra at the same time.
So that means what you are doing is you are saying Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya.
So it's not a fault, it's just the mantra, because you are not
So
thinking to
that
anything.
is a thought means this particular
You are
japa.
chanting mentally.
You are mentally chanting.
Yes.
This is meditation, no? So
This is
that
why she
means-
is saying thought. The chant is
Oh,
purely
the chant.
mental.
It's like the mental chant. Yeah. Good to clarify. It's
There's
not
more
just
rhythm
any
that
thought.
you're creating internally.
So, no. What you are trying to do is, your whole definition of you is the thought. What you are trying to see is, hey, there is a thought which goes and then there is a silence. Then comes yet another thought and then there is silence. Who are you? Neither the thought nor the silence. Because the thought is coming, silence is gone. Silence comes, then thought is gone. Then the thought comes, silence is gone. Both are variable. There is one presence in whose presence you see both thought and silence. So many meditations, they want to increase silence. Vedanta is very different. It's not like silence is you. Otherwise, what will happen? If silence is you, thought is a distraction. So in order for you to abide in your own nature, you should never think anything. That is crazy. So that means what you want to do is create a cognitive distance, not a physical distance. Cognitive distance means, am I really the thought? Or am I something much more than a thought? So that is something when the teaching is what? Teaching you that. It seems, how is it that there is a presence? By doing this, what happens is, you begin to have a proper relationship with your thought as well as silence. Please don't start thinking that I am silence. You are not silence. Your consciousness in whose presence both thought and silence exists. So therefore, this is some kind of an insight. Now, the next step. It's 6:45. I will explain, and that will explain that will answer your question. Up to here, you can do anything meaningless, it doesn't matter. But the definition of meditation according to Vedanta is relating to Isvara. Now, the next step, when you have an absorbed mind through these practices, a deliberate mind, not associative mind, and a certain cognitive distance where you have come back to your basic person, who is simple, who is not complex, who is not scheming, who is not afraid, who is not just a simple being. That now begins to look into the meaning of the chant. What does Om Namah Shivaya mean? That's why it has to be meaningful. That's why it will make you relate to Isvara. What am I saying? What is this chant? My salutations to Lord Shiva. Then if I go one step further, this is what we call dwelling on teaching. Dwelling on teaching, which is not, oh Shiva, who is this blue-eyed and who is this thing, is not your imagination. It is what you have to bring in the teaching. What did I explain yesterday? Somebody asked me, Solen asked me about God and Isvara, right? Who is Shiva, Solen?
Destructive.
The force of destruction, which is what? The intelligence is endowed with, intelligence manifests in this universe through series of laws. And one of it is what? Force of destruction. So destruction every, now, what, 7:45? 6:45. 6:45. So that means the previous moment went. Now it is 46. So 45 got destroyed and 46 came into being. 46 will be destroyed and 47 will come. This force of destruction is everywhere. And to this force of destruction, my salutations. Why? Can I avoid the force of destruction in my life? Can I fight it? Do I control it? I have to learn to work with it. Whole changing, reorienting your terms of transacting with this world. I will elaborate on this. Salutations to Lord Shiva. It has so many different aspects and you have to think about it. And that is in keeping with this teaching. That will reorient your whole deep psyche and deep orientations.
Could you repeat this step? Does it mean that you are dwelling on the meaning of the words?
Yeah, you have to dwell on the meaning of the words. And I will explain tomorrow in detail. What does it mean, dwelling on the meaning of this word? What does it really mean? I will talk about it. Okay? Yeah.
Do you use mala for japa?
You can. If you want to, you can. Initially, many people do it because it's kind of kind of a body aid, because it's generally only mind is not so easy, so it helps. But over a period of time, if you feel that it's you can do it mentally, then it's better. Because meditation by definition is a mental activity. Because what you want to do is to prepare your mind. Right? So as it becomes only mental, it becomes little better, but there is no rule. Please don't, if you feel comfortable with mala, please go ahead and do it. No problem. Yes.
I'm trying to understand the context here, because obviously this is, I guess, just a kind of introduction. Is this the only chant? Could you change Shiva with Vishnu? Would it still work?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
This is just an example of one chant.
Excellent.
Okay.
Right? Of course. You can use Om Ganeshaya Namah. You can use your own chant, right? Your own language, your own. But the main thing is this understanding has to come. Right? It's not like you have to use only Vedic chants. You can use any chant that you want. But it has to represent not Isvara and the right understanding of Isvara, not some vague understanding of Isvara. What you want to do is bring Isvara in your whole psyche, which will change you as a human being. That's what is most important. Not either Shiva or Vishnu or Ganesha or any other, whatever you want to use. But it has to be a name for Ishvara in your own language. It's fine.
But then it's good to change, maybe every now and then.
If you want, yes. See, free will, meditation is an activity. You can do, but what you want to do is, you want a focused mind, a mind which is deliberate, a mind which is able to see the relationship between thoughts and silence and oneself, and a mind who is able to think about Ishvara in its real way, according to this teaching. That's what you want. Within this, you can do what you want.
But the thinking of the meaning is still step 3. It's not another step.
This is another step. Because now the japa is over, now we come to seeing the meaning. That means you can't keep on repeating the name anymore. Do you understand? Now you have to contemplate, kind of think about it. Right? Because you can't keep on repeating and at the same time think about it. So japa has ended. And then now we move to the next step, which is understanding the meaning of the chant. What does it mean that my salutations to Ishvara means what? How? Just by this and that's all? Or it means something much more? Yeah. So that means this is how you bring Ishvara in.
So actually japa is also preparation to
yeah. So
to reflection.
No, japa is actually a real meditation. Why? Because so many things are happening. The mind is getting focused, then it is reducing your associative thinking. See, here already japa has come, Om Namah Shivaya has come. This is no longer considered preparatory. Breathing and scanning is considered. Already Isvara has entered here.
You invite him or she.
So that means you invoke Isvara and you enter into a relationship with Isvara. But a proper relationship with proper understanding, not some vague relationship with vague understanding. Okay.
We call this upasana.
Okay, upasana is a very different and it's a very technical term. So that means what happens is in upasana, in Vedas, in Upanishads also, in the 6th chapter, in Chandogya Upanishad, the 6th chapter starts with the teaching, Tattvamasi, but the first 5 chapters are on upasanas. So upasanas are not exactly meditations, they are what we call deliberate visualizations. And there are some guidelines given. Ahangraha upasana. So the Upanishads talk about how to, suppose they are visualizations of Isvara being everywhere. So there is one upasana which is beautiful. What you do is, the whole Isvara itself you see as a cosmic being, which includes everything.
Yeah.
So that is visualization. Right? It's an aid because what you do is you begin to this idea that remains, right? So that Isvara is everywhere. It's not easy to fathom. So what do? You create an imagery. But that imagery is not just any imagination. It is a deliberate imagery to contain the vision. Sometimes you can do the opposite. What is the opposite? In this body itself, you see the whole universe. That is yet another upasana. Right? And this is where sometimes all these things that you do, the kunyasa and all, may Saraswati sit on my tongue. She's not going to literally sit on your tongue. Right? These are imageries used in order to relate to Isvara in a certain way. That let my speech become meaningful, let it become deliberate, let wisdom comes out of it, not some junk. So all this is, right? So this is all different visualizations and imagery, which is not considered adhyasa. Why is it not considered adhyasa? Because adhyasa is non-deliberate. You mistake rope for a snake. Here, you deliberately superimpose, right? You are not actually believing that Saraswati goddess is coming and sitting on your, it's a visualization which has a representation. So this is why it is called upasana. It's slightly different from meditation. This is in Sanskrit called dhyanam, and upasana is this, what it is. But one thing is for sure, that you need to bring Isvara in whichever way that you are comfortable. You have to see the whole universe. When you see chaos, when you see meaninglessness, you have to see Isvara. That is non-negotiable.
Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.